The smell of roasted turkey filled the kitchen. It was warm, comforting, exactly how I imagined Christmas should feel. The table was set with appetizers, crisp white tablecloths, and hand-lettered place cards for every guest. I'd done it all. Me, Allison, 9 months pregnant and still running around to make everything perfect. Meanwhile, my mom, Barbara, and my younger sister, Lauren, were camped out in the living room scrolling on their phones and gossiping like they were guests at someone else's party. Not once had either of them offered to help, not even a thank you. "Wait, Allison did all this, girl. You're doing way too much," Lauren said with a snort. She laughed, but there was no warmth in it, just that casual, dismissive tone she always used. "She's always been the thoughtful one, right?" My mom chimed in like it was a joke. "That's just Allison. Tries to do it all, burns herself out, then turns around and blames everyone else." I smiled, or at least pretended to. But inside something sank. Heavy, deep. The truth is, I'm the one holding this family together now. Ever since Dad passed away a few years ago, I've been the one keeping the lights on. I'm the reason Mom and Lauren still have a roof over their heads. My accounting job pays the bills. And every time Mom called crying, saying I'm not feeling well, I always showed up. Every single time. I can't afford a doctor. Sure, I knew there was some inheritance and probably support programs out there, but I still pitied her for losing Dad. And once I started helping my mother, Laura naturally started relying on me too. She dropped out of college and decided to become an influencer, but did little beyond scrolling social media. Even so, whenever she guilt-tripped me with teary eyes, I couldn't bring myself to turn her away. Even now, nothing had changed. As I laid the forks on the table, a sudden wave of weakness nearly made my knees buckle. I carefully eased into a chair, trying not to draw attention. I wasn't feeling well, but if I said anything, they'd just laugh and call me dramatic. That's when I heard it. "What do you think you're doing?" "That's Lauren's seat, isn't it?" Barbara's sharp voice rang out from the living room. "Just because you're pregnant doesn't mean you get to be lazy. Get up." "Allison." All eyes turned to me. There was a 28-year-old pregnant woman being scolded by her mother in front of relatives and family. Friends. The air turned cold. "Mom, I was just taking a short break." "No excuses." Barbara stormed over and grabbed my arm, trying to yank me up. A sharp pain shot through me. I gasped involuntarily, but then a quiet voice came from the front door. "What on earth do you think you're doing?" Everyone turned. There stood Dorothy Manning, my grandmother, who was supposed to be too unwell to attend, with a cane in hand. She slowly stepped inside. The entire room froze in stunned silence. Her presence shifted the atmosphere completely, yelling at a pregnant woman. "How shameful. Have you ever even thought about how much your daughter sacrifices to support this family? Allison, you're not some servant in this house." Barbara flinched for a moment, but quickly looked away, trying to laugh it off. "Oh, please. I'm just disciplining her. You spoil her and she'll walk all over us. No, the one who's walking all over someone is you." Dorothy's voice was calm, but there was a sharp edge that cut through any room for pity. Family means showing gratitude to those who support you, not using your daughter for convenience and then looking down on her. That's not family. The looks from the guests began to shift where once I had felt the cold stares of. "Well, she's the oldest. It's expected." Now those stares were turning toward Barbara and Lauren. Lauren opened her mouth to speak, but said nothing. She bit her lip and looked down. Dorothy walked over to me and gently pulled out the chair beside mine. She leaned in and whispered, "You've given enough. Now it's time to live for yourself and your child." Tears welled up in my eyes. I had never asked for help. Not once. I believed that if I bore the burden in silence, things would work out. But now, with just a few words, my grandmother had started to melt the ice lodge deep within me. I didn't know how much she knew about the financial situation, but she must have seen enough to know I needed saving. "Thank you, Grandma." My voice trembled as I said it, but I didn't sit back down just yet. Instead, I pulled out my phone from my pocket and opened an app in silence. There it was, a detailed history of years of financial support, living expenses for my mother, medical bills, all of it. "No more!" I whispered to myself as I began canceling each scheduled transfer one by one, with every transaction complete message that flashed across the screen. I felt something loosen in my chest. Once I'd finished, I finally sat down in a chair in my own room. It's over. The words didn't come out, but I felt them tremble in my throat. A confirmation email arrived from the bank. The money flow was completely shut down. They would never siphon from my wallet again. It was quiet. The noise of the house, the noise of the past, all of it faded. It wasn't revenge I felt. It was closer to a prayer, finally answered. No one will ask for my approval or my sacrifice anymore. From that moment on, I was no longer anyone's daughter or sister or personal ATM. I was a woman reclaiming her own life. Several years ago, things were completely different. I worked for a major audit firm and I loved my job. My boyfriend Paul and I often talked about the future. On weekends, we toured small apartments together, saying maybe this is where we'll start our life. Paul Hansen. I was just 24, then still chasing dreams of a career and a family. Paul was the opposite of me. Outgoing, sociable, full of charm. It didn't take long for us to fall for each other. I remember on our first date, he said, "I love how you always try to take on everything yourself." I blushed, unsure how to respond, but I was a little happy to hear it. Back then, I was still paying most of my family's bills, too afraid to ask anyone for help. So Paul's quiet presence, his warmth, it felt like salvation to me. 1 year later, Paul proposed in a small restaurant. He held out a modest ring and said, "Will you build a life with me?" In that moment, there was no hesitation in my heart. I said yes. And as he pulled me into his arms, I could clearly see the outline of a happy future. But my family wouldn't allow it. From the start, my mother Barbara was against it. Does that guy even have any chance of a decent career? Their interference was exhausting. But the real problem wasn't my family. I had a dream of my own, a dream I wasn't ready to give up. Paul kept saying, "I don't care what your family thinks or how busy you are with work. I'm on your side. We can build everything from scratch." But even his kindness began to feel like a burden. One day, I told him quietly, "I'm sorry. I've thought about it a lot, and I think I need to focus on my career right now." Paul was silent for a moment, then simply replied, "Okay." No anger, no sadness, just a gentle smile. Even his kindness couldn't sway the resolve I had built. I never stopped liking Paul. In fact, part of me still wished him happiness. But back then, I wanted to choose a life I built for myself, not one where someone else sheltered me. 3 months after the proposal, we gradually drifted apart, and eventually we ended things. Paul would never have been happy with someone like me who only wanted to focus on her work. After the breakup, I buried myself in my career like I was locking away my emotions. I was in the office by 7 a.m. every morning, working late into the night, drowning in spreadsheets and deadlines. I got promoted. I became the head of the client management team faster than any of my peers, and my performance was stellar. But once I came home, reality waited for me. Mom's hospital bill went up again. "You make the most money, Allison. It's only fair, right?" At first, I thought of it as temporary support. But slowly, the entire household grew dependent on me. Lauren, who had dropped out of college, made a bit of money posting videos, but she never contributed to the household. Then came the breaking point. "We're thinking of moving in with you." Barbara dropped that on me the day after I signed the lease for my long-awaited new apartment. "Wait, what? You mean all of you?" I couldn't help but ask. Barbara replied like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You're moving into a bigger place, aren't you? If you can afford the rent, then having us there shouldn't be a problem. We're family after all. Besides, you won't be able to raise that baby on your own, will you?" Something inside me cracked when I heard those words before I could respond. Lauren jumped in. Yay, I called dibs on the loft room before I could even open my mouth. The dream I had fought so hard for was being rewritten into their new base of operations. From then on, my life was a series of compromises. Cleaning up after dinner, managing the finances, everything was pushed onto me with just one phrase. "You're the eldest, aren't you?" They would say we're grateful, but the gratitude was shallow, the exploitation constant. I covered Mom's medical bills and living expenses on paper. She was listed as a senior citizen living alone. In reality, I was living with her, supporting her. The reason we kept it separate was because Barbara knew she'd get more aid that way. Every document was carefully filed to maintain that illusion. And if I spoke up, I risked being accused of coercing my own family into dependence. I was fully aware of the contradictions, and I began to quietly plan my escape. I knew I couldn't go on like this. Now I'm 9 months pregnant. After the wedding plans with Paul fell through, I found out I was expecting. I gave in to Barbara's voice, saying you can't raise a baby on your own, and let myself be bound to this house once again that day as well. I looked at my swollen belly in the mirror and silently tried to push myself forward. Is this really okay? Is this the life I want? No one could answer that question for me. The only one who could was me. That night, even after I went back to my room, I couldn't sleep. I sat in front of the vanity, staring blankly into the dark mirror. My body ached. My belly felt tight. My feet were swollen. My back was sore, but the worst pain was in my heart. Lauren's careless laughter, Barbara's cold expression. In that moment, I realized clearly and painfully that I wasn't truly needed as family. My eyes burned, but I didn't want to cry. I wouldn't shed another tear for them. A few unread messages from Wendy lit up my phone on the nightstand. How are you holding up? Don't push yourself too hard. Call me if you need anything, okay? The tension in my shoulders eased for the first time in weeks, and then a small movement stirred in my belly. Oh, I gasped softly and gently placed a hand on it. For this child, I have to stand up. I need to go somewhere where no one looks down on me, where I'm not ruled by fear or control. The resolve settled quietly but firmly. The morning after the party, an odd silence hung over the Reynolds household. Barbara had posted a video of last night on TikTok. The title read, "A Mother's Lament Abandoned by Her Daughter on Christmas." The video showed my mother sitting alone in the corner of the room, crafted like a tragic heroine in some scripted drama. I wondered what people would think when they saw this. Anyone who watched that one-sided video would no doubt blame the daughter. That's the kind of performance it was. And that's exactly what Barbara wanted. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. The night before, my grandmother Dorothy had changed everything with a single outburst yelling at a pregnant woman. How shameful. Allison, you're not some servant in this house. That outburst ignited a long, suppressed fire inside me. When I woke up the next morning, I looked in the mirror with a clarity that hadn't been there before. I'm not a slave. I'm not an ATM. The words left my mouth not in anger, but with a calm, unwavering resolve. My conversation with Dorothy from the night before echoed in my mind. You've given enough. Now it's time to live for yourself and your child. Those words from my grandmother made me feel loved for the very first time. I picked up my phone and messaged Wendy. She had been my closest friend since college, an independent woman who ran her own online education platform. To me, she was the one person I could fully trust. Please, I really need to talk. The message was marked as read almost instantly. Anytime. Want to come over now? And just like that, one of the heavy weights on my chest lifted as I got dressed. I caught a glimpse of my reflection-hired eyes and a 9-month belly, but a steady, determined look in my gaze. No one controls me anymore. I whispered it to my reflection, and this time I truly meant it. Wendy's home was the one place where I could breathe. Can't believe we're seeing each other like this, but I'm so glad you came. I've been worried sick. She opened the door with a knowing smile, then welcomed me inside. There was herbal tea and homemade biscuits waiting on the table, and that small act of care made my shoulders drop just a little. Can I tell you everything? Wendy nodded. That was all the permission I needed, and I told her everything I had never dared say out loud. Now I paid all the bills, covered my mother's hospital fees, paid for my sister's tuition. How Barbara and Lauren leaned on me silently, demanding, never asking how. I couldn't say yes to Paul. Not because I didn't love him, but because I was too trapped. How the word family had become an excuse for exploitation. Wendy didn't interrupt once. She simply held my hand and listened. By the time I finished, tears spilled down my cheeks. "I'm not wrong, am I?" "No, you're not wrong. In fact, I'm amazed you held on this long. You're not alone anymore." Her words soaked into my heart like rain falling on parched ground. Later that day, Wendy introduced me to a friend of hers, a lawyer well-versed in family and financial law. Together, we calmly went over everything: documents, evidence, and how to apply for the support I deserved. "This isn't just an emotional matter. You've been mistreated economically, legally. We'll make this right." I nodded. It wasn't about vengeance anymore. It was about reclaiming the life I should have always had. That night, I lay down on Wendy's couch and gently rested a hand on my belly. I want to be the kind of mother this child can be proud of. That quiet but unshakable resolve burned inside me. The next morning, sunlight peeked through the curtains, brushing softly against my face. But there was no peace in my expression. Even after a few days at Wendy's, my mind never stopped racing. Even with the baby's movements reminding me of the life I carried, I couldn't fully rest. The humiliation at the party, Barbara and Lauren's cold stares, Dorothy's piercing words, and the slow collapse of my life's foundation. Everything circled through my thoughts like a storm. I knew I had made the right choice, but the years of learned self-sacrifice fought hard against my newfound freedom. When I left that house with nothing but a small bag in hand, my legs trembled slightly, but I couldn't let anyone see that I can't breathe. By the time I reached the bottom of the long staircase, I was already out of breath. My body was heavy. I could feel the baby shifting, trying to find space. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Just a little longer, okay?" I whispered it in my mind, taking one step at a time. The walk to the station had never felt so long. Even though I tied my sneakers tight, they felt loose somehow. And worst of all, people's stares felt ice cold. No one was going to help me. That truth cut deep. By the time I reached Wendy Station, my body felt like lead. But when I rang her doorbell, I was standing when I heard her voice. "Welcome back." Tears silently traced down my cheeks. There was someone who would welcome me. I told myself I'm going to be okay. When I opened my laptop, the video was still up. The one Barbara had posted on TikTok the day after the Christmas party. A mother's lament, abandoned by her daughter on Christmas. There she was on the screen, sitting dramatically in the corner like a tragic character from a stage play. I didn't want to trouble my pregnant daughter, so I kept my distance. Even if people misunderstand me, that's okay. I did it for her. The stage sniffles, the carefully chosen lighting, the on-screen captions highlighting my mother's tears. One by one, comments began flooding in. So moving. How could her daughter be so cruel? If you can't even love your own mother, how can you be a mother yourself? The video quickly surpassed 100,000 views. Donations, unsolicited but sympathetic, began pouring in. "This is a lie," I whispered to myself. I opened file after file with steady fingers. Bank transfers, payment records for hospital bills, even photos of Barbara dining at restaurants and shopping at malls during her so-called recovery, credit card statements, time-stamped receipts. The truth was clearly documented. Wendy said, "If you're going to reveal the truth, now's the time. You're not the daughter of a victim. She's pretending to be a victimized mother. But in reality, it's the opposite." I nodded silently, then placed my hands on the keyboard and began typing with quiet resolve. "You've got this, Allison. This is just the beginning." Wendy placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. I glanced down at my round belly. For this child, I have to change not just as a mother, but as a woman taking the first step toward a new life. I slowly opened the social media post editor. Until now, social media had been nothing more than a stage for my mother's lies. But not today. Today, it would be a platform for truth. Not emotion, but fact. This is not a rebuttal to my mother. This is a record of the truth. Beneath the caption, I uploaded PDFs of transfer receipts, proof of paid medical bills, and photos from Barbara's vacations posted during her so-called convalescence, including receipts for luxury makeup purchases while pregnant. I supported my family in ways most will never see. I want people to know what that looked like within 10 minutes. The comments started flooding in. Wait, so what's the real story? This evidence is too clear to deny. She did all this at 9 months pregnant. The mom in that video seems completely different now. Even locals began chiming in. These documents are real. Same format we use at my company. She's the one who does corporate finance support around here. She's trusted. The narrative shifted instantly. Barbara's carefully crafted victim role began to unravel publicly and loudly. When I hit post, I exhaled deeply. Whatever happened next, my heart was remarkably calm. This wasn't revenge. It was a step toward reclaiming myself and building a real life with the child. I carried. Wendy brought over coffee and sat beside me. That was impressive. There's no way they'll stay quiet after this. They don't need to respond. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm not going back. Wendy nodded, quietly patting my shoulder. My baby shifted gently inside me as if whispering, "Well done." I placed a hand on my belly and closed my eyes. We'll start a proper life together, just the two of us. No more control. No more fear. That night, hashtags began trending. What real family love looks like. Don't exploit pregnant women for sympathy. The next day, Barbara's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Her hospital called to say her prescriptions were now on hold. The pharmacy account had been suspended. Even her rent, electricity, and gas were now under someone else's name. I had reviewed the lease and contacted the property manager. I'd like to terminate the contract at the end of next month. I said it calmly. When all the logistics were in place, Wendy helped me move into a new home. It was time to start fresh with my baby. A few days later, Barbara and Lauren learned about it. Not from me, but from the property manager. The lease ends next month. For the first time, they realized how precarious their situation really was. They scrambled to reach me, but by then I changed my number and email. There was no direct line to me anymore. Faced with the reality of losing their home, Barbara yelled in frustration. Lauren, through tears, whispered, "How did it come to this?" But this was my quiet answer to the years I had spent shouldering a life that never belonged to me. Everything in their lives came to a halt. Their inquiries to local offices led nowhere. Then one day they received a formal notice. All previous support has been terminated. Lauren now lived in fear of public opinion. A clip from the Christmas party had surfaced online. Pregnant sister forced to give up her seat by her own mom and sister treated like a servant. The video spread rapidly, and with it came waves of backlash. How could they treat a pregnant woman like that? This sister is a total leech. Wait, they were living off her income. Her follower count plummeted. All brand deals were canceled. Every new pitch was met with. It's not the right image for us right now. One evening, the Reynolds family found themselves all together in the living room again, but the warmth was gone. "Mom, were we really that awful?" Barbara paused, lowering her newspaper. "Awful. That's a bit much, but everything we did, it was like repaying kindness with cruelty." Barbara bit her lip. They had lived off my income and felt entitled to it. They had given nothing and taken everything, and now they were being forced to confront that truth. Then the doorbell rang. It was a delivery. Inside the box was a simple card and a letter. To whom it may concern. I'm spending quiet days with my son in our new home. There's been a lot to reflect on, but I feel calm now. I don't intend to dwell on the past anymore, but I've made my choice. I won't be coming back. The life where I constantly sacrifice myself ends here in a quiet hospital room. I closed my eyes after a long fight. I held a tiny life in my arms, the warm weight of a newborn. Welcome to the world, Lucas. Tears slipped down my cheeks when I whispered his name. He opened his mouth and reached for my finger. No matter how lonely I had been, this moment made it all worth it. After being discharged, I moved into a small apartment on the west side of town. It wasn't new, but the sunlight filled the room. Simple furniture, a few houseplants, and Lucas's little crib were picture books I had once loved as a child. Then one day, a letter arrived, a pale gray envelope and handwriting. I instantly recognized to Allison just below the name written in careful script were the words, "Would it be wrong of me to dream that one day it could be the three of us? You, me, and Lucas." As I finished reading, I pressed the envelope gently to my chest. What came to mind was the gentle future we once dreamed of together. The day we talked about renting a place, just the two of us. Could I go back, stand beside Paul again? The time that had stopped for the two of us on that day was now beginning to move again, this time as three. Story 2. I must tell you something very essential, Mom. Abby abruptly broke the news in the fall of her final year of college, observing the gravity of her expression. I assumed it had to do with looking for a job, but her following statement really took me by surprise. "I'm getting married." My coffee cup holding hand froze in midair. "With whom are you married?" "Matt Watson. He was my college's senior. He currently works for a construction business as an engineer. His name was familiar to me. I mistook him for one of Abby's pals. Every now and again, she said I never thought they were dating. You've been seeing him for how long? 2 years or so. But I simply couldn't find a suitable moment to present him to you." I felt a twinge of loneliness as I saw her uncertain countenance. Did she not feel comfortable talking to me about relationships and love? I felt bad for being so preoccupied with my work that I overlooked Abby's heart's transformation. "We will shortly meet his parents. Do you want to accompany me, naturally?" I had no justification for refusing. As her mother, it was my responsibility to be present at such a significant time in my daughter's life. We went to the Watson family's house in a posh area a week later. I felt a little uneasy because of the big mansion and gate. I had no idea that Abby's fiancé would come from such a distinguished family. Being as quiet and reserved as an engineer, Matt was kind and obviously cared for Abby. However, he was considerate and nice when he spoke. However, Tom Watson, his father, was the issue. "My business is a construction firm," when he gave his business card to me. I was surprised. Tom Watson was a well-known member of the local business community, and Watson Construction was a well-known brand in this area. "My name is Wynn Piper. Home management services is what I do." "I thought so," Tom remarked, nodding gratifiedly. My card was not requested by him. He was obviously uninterested. Having to raise a child by yourself must have been difficult. It must be difficult to be a single mother. However, you should feel more safe now that Matt is here to help Abby. I noticed at once the sympathy in his remarks as well as the contempt he felt for me. I had been reduced to a charity case in his eyes. His kid had stepped forward. "One day, Matt will take over the business." Although I appreciate his decisions, I had always hoped he would wed someone from a more fitting background. "You and Miss Piper won't have to worry about your living situation any longer because Abby seems like a wonderful girl." His tone implied that I was in dire need of money and that this marriage was my salvation. In addition, I've heard that home services are really popular right now, but ultimately they're simply another name for housework, isn't it? Not exactly a company. It's more like a pocket money generating pastime. His remark was blatantly disparaging of my work. Beside him, I saw Matt seemed pallid. "That's Dad. Avoid becoming involved with this. I'm simply talking from personal experience here." Tom went back to me, Miss Piper, after silencing his kid. "I'm just being honest, even if it might have sounded harsh." Women working is wonderful, in my opinion. Let's face it, though, it has its limitations. After lighting a cigar, he continued, "In fact, I've recently developed an interest in a home service provider. Do you know what Piper Services is?" I shook my head silently. It was founded by an inexperienced housewife. She was fortunate. It's amateur hour at its heart, albeit I guess it's expanded in size. Inadequate handling of cash flow, not a strategic hire. Poor marketing, a perfect example of leadership driven by emotion. Tom seemed quite proud of himself as he smoked his cigar. According to my study, it brings in several $1 million a year, but its profit margins are pitiful. Benefits for employees are excessively substantial. Feelings, not reason, are driving it. Matt made a valiant attempt to talk to Dad about Piper Services. "Keep quiet," I said. Tom spoke louder. "Now I'm talking." Once more, he turned to face me. "Miss Piper, you might not find this important, but because you work, you should know that there are obvious issues with female-led businesses. First, an inability to think rationally and an excessive susceptibility to emotion. The second is the incapacity to make difficult choices. Too forgiving toward workers. Third, there is no long-term plan." I listened in silence. Anger was seething within of me. However, I kept it to myself. If I were in charge of the business, I would cut back on wasteful spending and only retain critical employees. Additionally, I could double or even treble the revenue with the right marketing plan. He gazed down at me while setting the cigar on the ashtray. "It may be first resisted by the women who formed it. After all, women are sensitive, but they will soon see the sense in what I'm suggesting. Otherwise, the business will eventually fail." Then Matt's voice trembled as he said, "One of our largest clients is Dad Piper Services." "What do you say? How could you say that about one of my firm's biggest clients?" Tom cut his son off. "You're not old enough to comprehend. The facts must be presented honestly in the business sector. Politeness and flattery don't help a business flourish." Then he faced me once again. "Just between us, Miss Piper. Depending on the conditions, there's a potential I may soon be managing that business. I may even think about employing you. Naturally, with appropriate operational supervision." I just grinned without uttering a word. Tom assumed that I was oblivious and proceeded with even greater haughtiness. "Miss Piper, I know you can't understand all of this, but that's the way business is. Emotions cannot guide your decision-making. You examine the figures that you effectively handle. Men are in a better position there." Despite Matt's obvious embarrassment, I gave him a little shake of the head. "Not quite yet. Now is not the time. The staff will undoubtedly feel more safe if I take over that business. It's only natural. They must be nervous. Under the direction of amateurs. But it would become a solid workplace with a seasoned businessman like me leading it." Tom, obviously satisfied with himself, glanced around the room. "Real business plan looks like that? Reasoned leadership, not sentimental thinking. In that regard, women simply aren't cut out for this line of work." "Thanks for the lesson," I smiled in response. However, I had already made up my mind about this man in my heart. He is a person who eliminates anything that doesn't align with his worldview and evaluates others based solely on looks, even if he ended up being the father-in-law of my daughter. Such a dude would be avoided by me. "I'm very sorry, Miss Piper," Matt murmured regretfully on the way home. "My father spoke things that I never expected him to say. Don't stress over it. He's not like you at all, are you? Obviously not. You are the originator of Piper Services, and I have known that since the beginning. All of my company's cleaning is done by your company. Abby told me everything, and you have my utmost respect." Indeed, I owned Piper Services, the business Tom was so keen to buy. Furthermore, he was unaware that the founder was seated just in front of him. Abby also talked uneasily. "My father-in-law said something terrible, Mom. I apologize." "It's all right. You should not be concerned." Despite my assurances, a tiny feeling of uneasiness began to grow within of her. What if on the day of her wedding he said something like that I wouldn't allow him to spoil my daughter's most significant day? So more than anything else, I started to be ready for the worst. I wanted the best for Abby. I believe that desire was much more ingrained in me than it is in most mothers, because I can still feel the tightness in my chest from that day 16 years ago. When Piper was 32, Abby had just begun first grade as a full-time homemaker at the time. I led a humble but contented existence. Miss, are you when Piper was on the phone with the cops? Ben, my spouse, had been involved in an automobile accident. One phone call, and he was dead. Our tranquil existence was utterly upended. I was plunged into a maelstrom of government documents, insurance paperwork, and funeral preparations. A ton of bricks of reality struck. My husband's money had been the foundation of our lives, but it broke apart. Life insurance was available, but it wasn't even close to being secure when I took Abby's future and the mortgage into account. When will Daddy return home? Mommy Abby's one inquiry was the final straw for me. I would do whatever it takes to keep her safe. Nobody could take away her future, in my opinion. Early morning janitorial labor was the first job I came upon. From 5 to 8 in the morning cleaning office buildings. I could be home before Abby woke up throughout the day, even if the money was meager. I accepted a part-time position at a nearby grocery. I did data entry job from home in the evenings, taking care of Abby while working 3 jobs a day. I think I slept for 4 hours every night. I was so tired at times that I almost passed out. However, Abby said in a lovely manner, "Good job today." The world's finest medication was Mommy. Despite the little amount of time we had together, I made every night, regardless of how exhausted I was, meaningful. I reserved 30 minutes for us alone. We discussed her school day, her friends, and her aspirations. I was working hard, and Abby knew it. Greater maturity than most kids her age. Taking care of herself, including bathing, finishing her homework, and getting ready in the morning. Her kind welcome home mama took away all of my weariness when I got home. As the years passed, we settled into a groove. Abby gained many of friends and did well in school. I gradually began saving money and improved at my employment. But I started to have a question. Is this sufficient? I was going to be close to 50 by the time Abby started college. Could I really use my existing salary to finance her dreams? For our future, wasn't there something more reliable and sustainable? Keeping those ideas in mind, I used all of my strength to get through each day. Abby was in her second year of middle school in the fall. My life took a different turn after an unexpected reconnection. I ran into Sandra Baker, an old college friend, at a shopping center. When is that you? Over a decade had passed since our previous encounter. How are you? Do you have a spouse? In response to her casual inquiry, I told her about my marriage. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone actually understood me as her face became hazy and she lowered her head profoundly. In reality, I'm divorced and am parenting my child alone. Isn't it difficult? We were immediately drawn together by that same experience. We then traded contact information and ended up chatting for about 2 hours in a nearby cafe. We spoke about our pleasures and struggles. Since her divorce, Sandra had been working as a freelance translator, but the inconsistent pay caused her worry. I'm hoping we can do something together. The whole affair started with just one statement. Sandra gave me a call a few days later. How would you feel about launching a home management business? An aging population, an increase in dual income homes, and time-pressed modern lifestyles were all factors she had already thoroughly researched. Every indication was that the need for domestic assistance was increasing. However, do you believe we can actually succeed? She confidently brushed my misgivings aside. When it comes to cleaning, you are an expert. And for years, each of us has been managing whole houses by ourselves. Nobody knows our clients as well as we do. Those who lack strength, time, or breathing room. We have experienced it. She was correct. I combined the practical knowledge of a full-time mother with the technical abilities I had acquired from my cleaning work. More significantly, we had everything to gain and nothing to lose. We began modestly. Neighbors' word-of-mouth recommendations resulted in requests for grocery shopping, food preparation, and cleaning. We accommodate jobs during the day on weekdays. Sandra's translation deadlines and my cleaning shifts. Sandra was in charge of sales and money. I concentrated on personnel training and operations. We started off as a 2-person team, but within 6 months we had 10 members. They were all ladies who had experienced the hardships of life just like us. Caregivers, stay-at-home mothers, single mothers, and those balancing work and family obligations, observing them at work. I understood that this was more than simply a company. It was a place where women could support one another and reclaim their freedom. A location where helping others enables us to grow and make a contribution to society. The difference was even apparent to Abby. "You seemed so content these days, Mommy." She was correct. My husband's death would always be painful. However, I had discovered a fresh feeling of purpose and existence that I had created with my own hands. Financially, the first year was difficult. Despite our occasional disagreements over how to manage the company, Sandra and I continued to clean. And with time, people began to notice our methodical approach and considerate service. Word got out. We made over $100,000 by the second year. By the third, we established a legitimate office and incorporated the company. Other businesses in the sector began to pay attention when we were highlighted in the local press. Abby was a high school student by then. She informed me of her desire to get a business degree. "One day, I want to assist your business." I thought all the struggle had been worthwhile when I heard those words. I had begun as a full-time housewife and never dreamed of owning my own business. The unpredictability of life is what makes it so fascinating. What started off as my second chance for Abby's sake had developed into something that benefited a great number of people. And I wasn't going to allow my daughter's wedding day to be marred by a man who disparaged that tradition. I got to the location a little early on the wedding day. Among the most distinguished spaces in the hotel was the function hall, a lavish event that fully reflected the significance of the Watson family's position. Abby's white wedding gown made her seem stunning. I was standing there staring at her. I was feeling quite emotional. The young child I had once cradled in my arms had developed into an incredible lady. "I'm grateful for everything, Mother." Taking my hand, Abby said, "All of my sacrifices felt worthwhile when I was in her loving embrace." I sat in the back as the ceremony started. A lengthy line of distinguished visitors from industry and politics sat on the Watson side. Only my close pals were on our side. Despite the sharp contrast, I didn't mind. Abby's pleasure was all that mattered. Following the ceremony, the toast was followed by the reception. Speeches were due. It was Tom Watson who got up first. "We appreciate your attendance as we celebrate my son Matt and Abby's marriage today." He spoke with ease and polish. To tell the truth, there was a time when I wished Matt would wed someone from a family more suited to standing a young woman from a traditional, affluent household. There was a bustle in the room. Abby's face went a little darker. But it's also my responsibility as a parent to honor my son's desires. Abby is a lovely, compassionate young woman who has overcome the terrible circumstances of growing up with only one mother to win over a man like Matt, and it is evident that Matt genuinely loves her. For women who are raised without privilege and frequently learn how to win a man's heart, that is no minor accomplishment. The room was filled with a murmur. The remark was obviously incorrect. Maybe Abby's understanding of adversity is the reason she was wise enough to keep someone like Matt from slipping away. Comfort-raised women typically lack the instinct for survival. Matt's face became white. Abby's eyes filled with tears. I mean it as a compliment, of course. Women who have experienced the hard truths of life know what a decent man is really worth. Abby established a strong friendship with Matt, a talented young guy. Having such life skill is admirable. Tom then turned to face me. "You brought up your daughter to be a good lady on your own, Miss Piper. Your job in domestic services must have been challenging, but Abby's strength came from that very practical experience, and we should be proud of that." My fist tightened. By helping people in their homes, Miss Piper has been able to support herself. That's not at all shameful. No matter what you do, be proud of it. There was complete silence in the room. Of course, our family's social and economic standings differ from one another. Nevertheless, Matt and Abby continued to grow their relationship, and I sincerely hope they find happiness. His remarks gave the impression that we had fought our way up from a lower social level. From now on, Miss Piper, you and Abby are also part of the Watson family. You don't have to fight alone anymore. Matt will look after you well, and as family, we will help you too. Abby will be delighted to have a father figure at last, I'm sure. Children raised by a single parent do require strong male direction after all. He seemed to think that this marriage was saving us. After a tough life, I think you'll find rest at last, Miss Piper. Cleaning services will no longer require you to invest excessive effort. You may now live more comfortably as a member of the Watson family. With a sense of benevolence, he talked with pride. Social boundaries can occasionally be overcome by love, and the wedding today is evidence of it. Two individuals from disparate social classes and backgrounds have joined forces. The narrative is lovely. Even though I continued to smile subtly, my rage was still burning deep inside. He presented us as their high society's acceptable charity case. By his kindness. Let's raise our glasses to Abby and Matt now. To genuine affection, a toast. Overcoming the disparity in class. I made a solid choice in my heart while the room swayed in uncomfortable quiet. The microphone then made an announcement. We then invite Miss Wynn Piper, the bride's mother, to speak for a little while. Abby turned to face me, hope shining in her eyes. I got up from my chair. As I took the microphone, my hand shook a little. Everyone was watching me. Even Tom seems perplexed and unsure. Right now. Thank you for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen, to celebrate my daughter Abby's wedding. I'm Abby's mother, and my name is Wynn Piper. I steadied my voice by taking a deep breath. I lost my spouse when Abby was 7 years old. I brought her up by myself for the following 15 years after that day. The room froze. It was challenging, very difficult. Jobs weren't easy for me because I was a full-time housewife. To support Abby, I worked 3 jobs: data entry at night, part-time at the grocery store during the day, and office cleaning at dawn. I turned to face my daughter. Now tears trickled down her cheeks, yet she never once grumbled. She would always remark, "Good job today, Mom," and grin as she greeted me. I persevered because of her strength. Soft sobbing reverberated across the gathering. I launched a home service company 10 years ago with my buddy Sandra. It was once a tiny business, but with the help of many, it has now expanded to employ more than 200 people. Tom's face shifted. We at Piper Services assist time-pressed people in managing their everyday lives. It is a privilege to have Watson Construction as one of our esteemed customers. A commotion occurred in the room. Tom looked anxiously at Matt. A person's looks is frequently used to assess them. I was considered the unfortunate single mother for a very long time. However, I never let their criticisms deter me. I followed my own route. I faced Tom and looked him in the eyes. Abby observed me as I went. She developed into the type of woman who could be loved by someone as amazing as Matt, and I think that's why. The audience exploded in heartfelt cheers. I put down the microphone and went back to my chair. Stunned, Tom stays upright. His hands were shaking and his face had turned pale. He came up to me after the reception. I want to truly apologize, President Piper. My last statement was really inappropriate. He said he was sorry. I would be grateful for the opportunity to talk with you more if that is feasible. As you can see, our organization is presently seeking to diversify into new markets. As soon as he understood I was a successful business owner, his tone had altered. There wouldn't have been an apology if I had truly been a single mother. I declined courteously. Thank you, but let's just enjoy our connection as Matt and Abby's family from now on. Maybe another time, as for business. Across the room, I could see Abby grinning and having a heartfelt conversation with Matt. Tom Watson's morals, in my opinion, would never alter, but as long as my daughter was content, that was sufficient. Matt called me out of the blue 6 months after the wedding. Do you have a moment, Miss Piper? I want to talk about something about my father's business. He spoke in a different tone. I mean it. In trouble. There was obviously a problem. Matt and Abby paid me a visit the next day. Abby was clearly concerned, and Matt was sullen. The fact is, my father's business is having a lot of problems. Matt started. He lost the trust of several staff after the wedding. He spoke to you in front of several of those who attended the event. I was taken aback. I was unaware of the presence of Watson construction workers. Even though he normally talks down to his employees this time, it made them push themselves to the edge. Abby added her voice. There are several women in management at Matt's firm, Mom, and they were particularly incensed. Matt gave a nod. My father has previously made sexist comments, but this time he was addressing an accomplished businesswoman like you. Well, something was sparked. Suddenly, all of the women in the company started talking. It was far worse than I had anticipated. Major clients have even complained to us. They have stated that they are unable to do business with a corporation that is led by an individual who holds such antiquated beliefs. Matt went on to say that my father's angry reaction was the worst part. He stepped forward and said that the clients were simply overreacting and that the women were being overly sentimental. He declines to accept any accountability. A deep moan escaped my lips. How is the business doing financially then? Not good. Half of our senior staff have left and a third of our important clients have canceled contracts. We've lost almost all of our female project managers, Abby stated worriedly. In the midst of all of this, Matt has been trapped. It's been really difficult for him. My father maintains that this is only a short-term problem, but that is untrue. The survival of the business is in jeopardy. I paused to reflect. So what would you like to do? Matt's eyes are fixed on mine. I can't do it alone, but I want to take over the business and rebuild it. I need your assistance. My assistance? Miss Piper, indeed. My goal is to establish a commercial alliance with your organization, to create a new paradigm that prioritizes the combination of building and service. You are the kind of person I need, someone well-respected to aid in rebuilding the company's confidence. I hesitated, then answered. Okay. However, I have health issues. Whatever they are, Tom has to resign completely first. Second, a complete overhaul of the corporate culture is required. No more prejudice, no more sexism. Respect must be shown to each and every employee. Without hesitation, Matt nodded. Of course, that's what I want to do. Later, he went up to his father and asked that executive authority be transferred. Of course, Tom blew up. However, the board had had enough when the crisis's full extent became apparent. In the end, they all called on Tom to step down. He yelled, claiming to be ungrateful and a traitor. However, even the biggest stakeholder in the firm, his elder brother, informed him, Tom, it's over. At last, Tom officially acknowledged reality. Due to health concerns, he resigned, and Matt assumed complete control of the business. Nevertheless, Tom went on murmuring that it had been an error. Abby, Matt, and I collaborated to construct Watson Construction over the course of the following 3 months. Many workers were first dubious, but eventually trust started to grow again. Sending a few of my company's female managers to Watson Construction to assist in spearheading organizational restructuring was particularly successful. People were impressed by their character and ability. Now enrolled in college, Abby contributed to the creation of a new HR system using her knowledge of business. The company's antiquated methods were revitalized by her innovative and adaptable thinking. Watson Construction underwent a transformation 6 months later. Employee happiness skyrocketed. There were new customers. The firm started to garner industry attention, and the proportion of women in leadership increased to 30%. Tom no longer showed up for work and had fully distanced himself from management. The business was flourishing under Matt's new leadership when he was formally appointed CEO. Matt and Abby came over one day to update me. Matt grinned as he stated, "Thanks to you, we achieved 150% revenue growth this quarter. We're adding fresh talent at a good rate, and employee turnover is far lower." With delight, Abby said, "The atmosphere on job sites is so much better now, especially with more female engineers." I was genuinely joyful. This is the outcome of your diligent efforts, you two. But without your help, we couldn't have succeeded. "Thank you so much, Miss Piper," Matt remarked. "How did your father's situation go?" Abby paused a little when I asked. "We don't do much of it. Only a couple of formal dinners every year, not much more." Matt gave a nod of assent. "We won't allow him to return to the firm, even though he still won't acknowledge his mistake. We'll do the bare minimum as a family, but nothing more." I got it. Sometimes maintaining peace requires maintaining a certain distance. I think that sounds correct. You two simply go on their separate paths. Abby and Matt extended their hands and clasped them. It seems like the struggles they endured together had strengthened their relationship even more. People can change, I thought as I looked out the window, but you can't make someone change if they don't want to. The most important thing is to walk with and encourage people who choose progress. Tom Watson's pride and intolerance had cost him dearly. However, Matt and Abby were constructing a brighter future after learning from his errors. And I believed that riches and titles don't truly reflect one's value. It is based on respect, decency, and the ability to get back up after a setback. I think that's what true value is. Story 3. Brandon is my name. My age is 34. And I've been the one behind the curtain for as long as I can remember. While my family grinned for the pictures, I was discreetly pulling the threads, arranging, paying, repairing, and smoothing things out. That's not what I say to sound honorable. It's simply the way it has always been. I was the planner, the trustworthy one, and the responsible one. I was already assisting my younger siblings with their homework and making appointments for my mom's doctor's visits when I was 12. Dad used to call me the glue and give me a pat on the back, but glue never gets a thank you. Until it cracks, it merely keeps everything together. This year was Dad's 65th birthday. A significant amount. Retirement, Medicare, everything. I assumed that I would go all out every time he expressed his desire to travel to the Caribbean, a bright, sunny place with unending buffets and crystal clear water. 6 months before the trip, I began organizing it. I looked into shore excursions rooms and cruise lines in order to get a personalized cake with the words, "Happy 65th Captain Kin," inscribed in gold icing. I even worked with the ship's events manager. I spent a total of $10,200 on the vacation. I remained still. I did this for my father. Not only for him either. It was for everyone in the family. For my parents, I reserved cottages. Kevin, my younger brother, and his spouse. Myself, my sister Gina, and Lisa, her girlfriend. There are 7 of us. I ensured that everyone had a paid itinerary and a private balcony. Scuba diving in St. Thomas. San Juan zip line. In Barbados, sampling rum. Everything. I even created custom baggage tags. I was reviewing my packing list at my work 3 days prior to the vacation. It was a group text from Gina when my phone died. "Just so you know, Brandon, we gave Lisa your cottage instead. According to Dad, she makes him laugh more and he wants to spend the trip with her. I hope that's cool." I read it again after blinking at the screen. To be sure I hadn't missed a joke, I scrolled higher. Perhaps they were planning a surprise and this was part of it. Not at all. Kevin's response was, "LOL, classic Dad." Lisa used a heart emoji in response. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody inquired about my feelings about relinquishing the place I had paid for. Nobody even bothered to express gratitude. They treated me like a stray extra who had gone off to their holiday, bumping my hotel, my trip, and my card. For a while, I just sat there. Not upset, not quite yet. Mostly in a state of shock. You are familiar with the constricted sensation behind your eyelids, similar to the buildup to a storm. That was how it felt. The realization that this was nothing new came slowly and bitterly. It was only the priciest iteration of an ancient design. They constantly took, and I always gave. Lisa had more humor. Lisa was more entertaining. Lisa was nearer to me and the family. The organizer was me. The backup plan, the wallet. I took a good look at the message before responding. Make a copy of that. I only stated that. Not cool, not okay. 2 terms with a wide range of meanings. They didn't inquire further. I poured myself some whiskey that evening. I turned on my laptop and signed into all of the reservation portals that were available to me. The group airport transfer, the cake seller, the cruise line, and even the private island tour. I canceled all of them and made arrangements to send everyone to the port. The problem with being the planner, the fixer, and the glue is this. Everything was in my name, including the booking confirmation and the password. 3 to 24 a.m. Gina sent me an SMS. Hello, just making sure. Has the snorkeling trip been canceled? The app does not display it. I didn't respond. Kevin added, Bro, why does the cruise booking say no active reservation at 4:11 a.m.? What's happening? Didn't respond yet. 6 a.m. My mother called. I let it to ring. After that, I switched off my phone and took a stroll. While some repercussions was to be expected, what transpired next was a cascade. It seems that my parents had previously discussed the cruise with all of their acquaintances. Both Gina and Kevin had taken time off from their jobs. They had set up automated light timers, dog sitters, and daycare. For the trip, Lisa reportedly purchased a whole new beach attire, tagging it on Instagram with the hashtag #CruiseQueen. And now nothing. Don't travel, not a cake, no beach. Even their enhanced drink packages were canceled by me. However, it wasn't the end. The satisfying part wasn't even that. Because I was organizing my own sea for the last few years while they were rushing, contacting support, ranting with customer service representatives, and trying to rebook at the last minute, only to discover that everything was either sold out or quadruple the price. In a house I owned, my parents had been living for free. I inherited the house from my grandpa, so technically it was still in my name. It made sense, so I'd let them remain there. They were mortgage-free. I didn't require the location, and I felt like a good son because of it. The once I saw that sentence, everything changed. I thus got in touch with a property management business, scheduled a thorough inspection, and delivered a formal notice of tenancy termination. 3 days later, the locks were replaced. The utility accounts no longer included their name. They were utilizing a shared Verizon family plan that I terminated under my name. Their storage unit, of course, paid until the end of the month before being scheduled for removal. I didn't yell. It wasn't a dramatic email that I wrote. I just relocated each component individually. The worst part is that they didn't even know the trip was canceled until the day before their scheduled departure. They arrived at the harbor wearing similar t-shirts that read, Dad's 65th ship happens, smiling and carrying luggage. However, no check-in was made. No reservations, no cabin, not a cake, no. Brandon. That only served as the warm-up. It was already too late when they recognized what had transpired. Since I started receiving calls once more, I am aware of this. Not messages, voicemails and calls from confused and desperate people. Some are enraged, while some are only begging. It appears that there has been some sort of error, Brandon honey. The first message came through with Mom's voice crackling. We're not on the list, the cruise line claims. Would you please give them a call? You made all the reservations correct, Kevin again. All okay, man. Not amusing. As if we understand. You're angry. Lisa's statements were meaningless. Give me a call. Let's make this right. There was no voicemail from Gina. She just made 7 consecutive calls. Lisa. For the first time in weeks, she sent me a message. Actually, Brandon, I know we started off badly, but this is a huge event for your dad. Don't spoil his special day. Over a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. Before I clicked, I watched her message go unread for an hour. Observed. Since it wasn't about the trip at that point, rather, it was about every family portrait I took for them and being instructed to stand behind the camera, I didn't respond. All of them. I appreciate your planning. Every Christmas I spent cleaning dishes I never received. Every Brandon will take care of things, treating me like a live assistant while the joy was watching football, rather than their son, their sibling. I had given them the benefit of the doubt for years, telling myself that they loved me, that they were only in the moment, and that they didn't mean it. Simply didn't convey it in the same manner. However, I paid for and handed it to Lisa with a nonchalant, "She makes Dad laugh more," after they stole my room, which was my actual wager on the trip. I realized then that they still remembered me. They simply didn't believe that I was important. Then they were outdoors now. Literally. Because they returned to the house I used to let them reside in 3 days after the disastrous cruise and were unable to enter. With my car parked across the street, my windows tinted, and my sunglasses on, I watched. I wanted to see it because I needed it to feel real, not because I was cruel. For once. I wanted them to experience the same sense of exclusion I did. Not welcome. The handle was first tried by a small mother, then the subsequent doorbell, fumbling with his keys. The previous evening, I had had my locks changed. Once more they rang. I was knocked. I saw the bewilderment turn to annoyance, then to fear. Kevin took his phone out. I could infer what he observed. Due to non-payment and unauthorized subletting, they were given 30 days to leave the property by a forwarded legal notice that I had printed and emailed. Technically true thanks to Lisa crashing there without notice a few weeks prior. Gina stormed to the side of the house and tried the back door. I'd had that reinforced too. Eventually, they noticed the neighbor watching the same neighborhood once asked me why I never came to the barbecues, then laughed when I said I wasn't invited. She gave me a nod as I drove off that afternoon. The texts turned angrier after that. "You had to know, right? Where are we supposed to go, Brandon? This is insane. You're acting like a stranger." Lisa's post about the cruise quietly disappeared from her feed. Then the real unraveling began. Dad's old business partner texted me to ask why the emergency fund wasn't responding to payment requests. Turns out my name was still attached as cosigner. Another thing I'd been too helpful to change. So I did. I moved the money to a trust under my name. Legal. Clean. I even called to confirm there was no breach of contract. There wasn't. Next came the streaming services. Netflix, Hulu, Spotify. Family plan all canceled. Passwords changed. Email logins locked. A week later, I got a call from Mom. I stared at it, didn't answer. Then another voicemail. She sounded tired. Smaller. "Brandon, we don't know what to do. Your dad's sleeping on Kevin's couch and Jenny's staying with friends. I know you're angry, but this is your family. We're not perfect, but we love you. Can we please just talk?" I sat on my couch, surrounded by silence. No laughter, no noise, no obligation. Just tranquility. And then I got another message from Jenna this time. No greeting, no apology. Just, "Are you seriously going to throw away your entire family over a joke?" That's when something shifted in me. Because it wasn't just a joke. It was a summary. A distillation of every moment I'd been told I was less than every time they pushed me aside. I then acted shocked when I didn't stick around to pick up the pieces. I thought about replying. Instead, I started writing something else. Not to them, to the lawyer. Because this wasn't just a vacation anymore. This was a full reset. And they hadn't even seen the worst part yet. I didn't reply to Jenny's message. I didn't need to. I was already several steps ahead, drafting documents with my attorney to formalize what had already begun. A clean separation. Emotionally, financially, legally. There was no major encounter, no shouting match. I didn't hurl dishes or yell that I was done, since I had been done softly, gently, in the manner. You stop watering a plant not out of malice, but because you understand it was never yours to take care of in the first place. The lawyer's office was a tiny spot situated between a bakery and a tailor shop downtown. Nothing spectacular, but it felt decisive. We met in person. I brought a list carefully written cross-referenced. My name was still on, more than I realized. My parents' health insurance copay account, a line of credit they'd been utilizing for years in case of crises. The registration on the family automobile remained in my name from when I helped refinance it 5 years ago. I ordered the lawyer to transfer, revoke, dissolve, or close everything, whichever would remove the relationships fastest. And that storage unit, I had it open. I didn't discard anything. I'm not that individual. However, because Dad was staying at Kevin's, I paid movers to have everything packed up and sent there. On top of the boxes, the invoice was taped. At this point, the message's tone changed once again. They had lost their anger. They didn't understand. I was hurt. It's almost theatrical. This isn't you, Brandon. Could we just take a seat like grown-ups? You're taking revenge. Hateful. That one stayed with me. I nearly burst out laughing at the irony, because I had always been understanding, forgiving, and accommodating for 34 years. Kevin destroyed his car and required a trip from the police station by himself, so I missed my college graduation. Jen, rent money twice without ever requesting reimbursement. In an attempt to cheer them up following Dad's operation last fall, I sent Mom and Dad to Vermont. I did it for no recognition. I think that's what family was meant to be, therefore I did it. However, they didn't. Not at all. My generosity wasn't love to them. It was inventory. A resource is anything that can be distributed, utilized, assumed. The day I discovered the voicemail made that very obvious. I hadn't spoken to that person in years. Uncle Denise, the younger brother of my dad, he got into a fight with his father about a little matter. Dennis never paid back the money he borrowed, according to Dad. Dad lied about a loan, Dennis said. That never took place. Who can tell the truth? But I nearly didn't respond when Dennis called me out of the blue. He sounded lower than I had recalled, slower, as if each syllable had to be drawn from the depths. I don't want to interfere, but I believe you ought to be aware, Brandon. The other day, your mom left a message on your aunt's phone. I was unaware that it was still recording. She was ranting about you, saying that this whole situation is simply another instance of your constant pretense of superiority. Said that you're punishing them because you can't bear to see other people happy and that you've never understood what it takes to make sacrifices. He hesitated. I wanted to share it with you. I said very little. I just thanked him. I hung up and sat in quiet, although I told him I appreciated the call. Not even the words were painful. It was the affirmation. The knowledge that after everything they were still blind to their mistakes. They continued to portray themselves as the victims in a narrative that I had no desire to create. The next day, I revised my will, took all of my family members off of the beneficiaries list, and established a new trust that would fund first-generation college student scholarships. Silently, there are no structures or plaques bearing my name. Just something practical, something tangible. I changed my phone number the same week. New carrier, new account, new phone. Only my best buddy Sam, my lawyer, and my assistant were given the number. It was Sam who brought 2 six-packs and a bag of tacos over that evening. He remained silent, asked if I wanted to watch something that wasn't about family, and then offered me a drink. We watched an outdated action film with predictable explosions and awful dialogue. It was flawless. The knock on my door came at that moment. I had no expectations, no deliveries, no appointments. I went to check on the people while you did the TV, Sam. Jenna was the one. Hair secured. She has dark circles beneath her eyes. She held her phone tightly in one hand. In the other was what appeared to be a folder. She didn't appear upset. She appeared exhausted. The door was not opened by me. Softer this time, she knocked. I just want to talk, Brandon. I stood behind the door and watched her, not talking, not moving. Then she said it. It has to do with Dad. Something took place. A gentle knock again, then a softer one. In Kevin's backyard, he fell off a ladder. He's okay. Bruised ribs and a sprained wrist. He's afraid, though. He's requesting you. I remained silent, not by way of the door, not in my mind. I wasn't cold in my silence. Clarity was the key. I was no longer the anxious, eager-to-please son. I didn't feel guilt surging up or some compulsion to rush to his side and fix everything. I just felt curious. I was wondering what angle this was. Curious if they still thought this was a game of leverage. I know we messed up, Jenna said after a long pause. I know you don't trust us. Maybe you never should have. But he's asking for you, Brandon. Not Kevin, not even Lisa. You. I finally opened the door. Not because she said the right thing, but because I was ready to look her in the eye. And when I did, I saw it. Not manipulation, not a properly rehearsed script. Just fatigue. And maybe a shard of comprehension. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her voice, when she spoke again, was rough. He stated he wanted to apologize. I gave a nod. So let him. She seemed bewildered. To you, Brandon? Not in a group SMS, not through me. To you. I went outside and slammed the door behind me. Didn't ask her inside. She gave me the folder after we stood on the porch for a minute. I opened it. A note in Dad's blocky, uneven handwriting was inside. It was brief. I'm not very good at saying the correct words, Brandon. Not at all. I am aware that I have relied too much on you. Too much was expected. I also realized that I never truly gave you the gratitude I deserved. The slack was always taken by you, and by pretending it didn't matter, I made it worse. I allowed others to belittle you. I occasionally joined in. I'm responsible for it. I apologize. None of it was fair to you. I hope you're content right now. Dad, you deserve to be. I waited to feel anything as I stood there reading it again. Anger, verification, sadness, but I just sensed the reality of it. Although it wasn't flawless, the apology was sincere. Jenna gave me a glance. Did you decide not to call, claimed that he assumed you would hang up if he phoned, block him if he texted you? She was not mistaken. She went on, I'm not here to guilt you. I wanted to let you know that he's making an effort. I gave a nod, gave the folder back, closing it. Inform him I received the letter. Would you like to know? Slowly, she nodded once more. Also, for the first time in a long time, she didn't dispute. Okay, she responded simply, and made her way back to her vehicle. The following day, I saw her drive away. I mailed Kevin a little package. There was a post-it note and a laminated copy of the letter. I appreciate the letter. We're through, but I accept your apologies. Be careful. I didn't require anything more. I would not return. I didn't require any staged forgiveness, arc, a tearful reunion, or a dramatic confrontation. I had no desire to gradually reintegrate them into my life one text at a time. The chapter was closed. I choose to spend the ensuing months creating something greater instead. I formally opened the scholarship fund I had established and named it after my grandpa who bequeathed me the dramatizing mansion. I paid for the first 3 students' debt-free community college educations. We met and spoke with them, provided them with the type of assistance I wish I had received when I was their age. I had always wanted to visit Portugal, but I kept putting it off till later, so Sam and I did just that. For the first time in decades, I felt as I stood on the cliffs overlooking the ocean, as if I were no longer holding my breath. I sold the family home at a respectable profit and used the proceeds to invest in a small nonprofit incubator for first-generation business owners. I also purchased a tiny condo in the city. None of it was aired by me. Didn't publish anything online. I kept my family in the dark. After the voyage, I only lived for a year or so. That never took place. A letter arrived in the mail. No address for return. There was a picture of a photo dad with a cast on his chair arm, grinning clumsily at the rear camera. We still speak about you, it stated. Lisa finally learned how to make the stew you enjoyed. She always burns it. I figured you'd like that. All right, I grinned, but didn't answer. There was no closure. Those words must also be definitive. Freedom was what I received. Freedom from constantly being the fixer and the helper. The emotional trash can. Freedom to decide who may and cannot access me. I never lost interest in them. I just stopped allowing them to treat me like a disposable object. They can accept the repercussions. At last, I began life according to my own terms.